If it bothers the farmers and the truckers, it's probably wrong, because you can't get more bedrock working class than farmers and truckers. And that does seem to me to be a reasonable measurement tool.
There was no religion anymore. There's no Christianity. No one in Brussels running the European Union would dare talk about God. They have a new religion: climate change and the net zero agenda. And net zero, of course, is about not just massively reducing carbon dioxide emissions, but also dealing with nitrogen, dealing with phosphates. And so people get together in Brussels who have never visited a farm in their lives, let alone farm themselves, make a series of rules and regulations that then get imposed down through the member states of the European Union onto the lives of ordinary farmers, making life literally impossible, unprofitable, intolerable. They're overcharged for their diesel, which they need so badly for their tractors. They told they must cull their cows because the back-end emissions could destroy us all. This is a very big deal, and the political implications are enormous, because the farmers are pointing the finger at the globalists in Brussels running the unaccountable European Union.
When the politicians start telling you what you can and can't eat, we've crossed a line. It's like, you don't get to tell me where I set my thermostat. You don't get to tell me what I can drive and when, and you certainly bloody well don't get to tell me what I can eat. If the policies are bothering the farmers and making them protest, something is up, because that's just not how farmers operate, not generally. And the same can be said for truckers. When they're goaded into political action, something genuinely rotten is occurring. Not only are these green policies devastating to the working class and to the poor and to the economic stability of Europe as a whole, and then to the stability of the world in general, they are counterproductive by the standards put forward by the green advocates themselves. You have to import your bloody power at a tremendously high cost, and then you're going to shut down local production of food in favor of imports. And it was only a few years ago that all the green revolutionaries were jumping up and down screaming about the fact that you should buy local, exactly to decrease the kind of transportation costs that you're pointing to. And so it's such a mystery, because the policies that are being pursued don't even suffice to service the goals that are hypothetically trumpeted by the formulators of the policies themselves. It's a bloody miracle of stupidity and blindness.
Join us on a journey through the heart of recent farmer protests sweeping across the European Union, from Greece to Germany, Portugal to Poland, and reaching a pivotal moment in Brussels. As we delve into the intricacies of this collective outcry, from farmers expressing discontent, we will discover the nuanced reasons behind their protests and explore the victories, such as the temporary halt in protests by French farmers.
Place des règles plus strictes pour éviter les abus très clairs d'observation du marché, qui permettraient des mesures d'intervention si les céréales venant d'Ukraine qui sont mises sur le marché européen viennent à déstabiliser de manière trop importante nos cours, les prix, ou créer une concurrence qui serait déloyale, avec différents mécanismes qui peuvent être de bloquer, d'intervenir sur les prix ou autres.
This isn't just a simple protest, it's a collective surge of frustration, a symphony of tractors and voices echoing across the fields. As we unravel the threads that tie these movements together, it becomes apparent that beneath the diversity of triggers lie universal challenges plaguing farmers. Rising costs, akin to an unrelenting storm, batter the agricultural landscape. The tempest of economic pressures, fueled by spikes in energy, fertilizers, and transportation expenses, leaves farmers grappling with the harsh reality of a diminishing bottom line.
Honourable members, while the European Council was in session, farmers from across Europe were taking to the streets. Many of them feel pushed into a corner. Farmers are the first in line, feeling the effects of climate change. Droughts and floods have destroyed the harvest and threatened their livestock. Farmers are feeling the impact of the Russian war, inflation, the rising costs of energy, the rising cost of fertilizers. Nevertheless, they work hard every day to produce the quality food we eat. And for this, I think we owe them appreciations and thanks and respect. Our farmers deserve to be listened to. I know that they are worried about the future of agriculture and about their future as farmers, but they also know that agriculture needs to move to a more sustainable model of production so that their farms remain profitable in the years to come. And we want to make sure that in this process, the farmers remain in the driving seat. And this is why we launched the strategic dialogue on the future of agriculture in the European Union. We have invited a broad scope of representatives of the farming sectors, the young farmers, the rural communities, the seed and fertilizer industry, the food sector, the processing sector, but also the financial sector, the cooperative banking sector, the consumers and environmental groups, and of course, science. Now, effective nature protection must offer generous incentives for intervening. Farmers need a worthwhile business case for nature-enhancing measures. Perhaps we have not made that case convincingly. A real incentive that goes beyond mere loss of yields is required. Public subsidies can provide those incentives and, for example, premium labeling in cooperation with retailers and processors. In other words, nature conservation can only be successful through a bottom-up and incentive-based approach. Because only if our farmers can live off their land will they invest in the future, and only if we achieve our climate and environmental goals together will farmers be able to continue to make a living.
A storm intensified by the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, stirring the economic seas and leaving farmers in Central and Eastern Europe particularly vulnerable. A nearly 9% drop in farm gate prices, propelled by governments and retailers striving to appease cost-conscious consumers. These farmers, the backbone of Europe's food production, find themselves caught in the crossfire between economic survival and providing affordable sustenance to the masses. A pivotal element of the European Green Deal lays down stringent targets for farmers, demanding a radical shift in production methods. As wildfires ravage Greece and droughts parch southern Spain, the impact of climate change on agriculture becomes a rallying point for those burdened by conflicting demands, cheaper food and climate-friendly processes.
Si no hay agricultura no vamos a comer, han subido muchísimo los precios, no sé quién se queda aquí con el dinero, si los mercados grandes o no lo sabemos, pero los agricultores somos los que estamos pagando el pato.
The quest for cheaper products sends shockwaves, a tremor felt keenly by those who toil in the fields, planting the seeds that sustain nations. The influx of cheap imports acts as the final gust in this perfect storm. The EU's waiver of quotas and duties post-Russia's invasion floods the market with cheap agricultural produce from Ukraine, amplifying the resentment among farmers in Central and Eastern Europe. A bitter pill to swallow, as these imports undercut the prices of local produce, leaving farmers wrestling with the harsh winds of unfair competition. Consolidation, driven by the historical principle of economy of scale, has left smaller farms on the brink of extinction. As we embark on this journey through the shared grievances, it becomes evident that the pan-European farmer rebellion is more than a protest. It's a plea for survival, a battle cry against a system that threatens the very essence of agriculture. The fields resonate not only with the hum of tractors, but with the collective heartbeat of farmers, demanding a re-evaluation of priorities, policies, and the profound connection between those who sow and those who reap. Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 exacerbated these economic pressures. Simultaneously, governments and retailers, wary of the impact of a rising cost of living on consumers, have pushed for reductions in food prices, amplifying the financial strain on farmers. Import-related issues further compound the problem. The impact of climate change on agriculture has become a significant source of concern. Extreme weather events such as wildfires in Greece and droughts in southern Spain have adversely affected production. Farmers feel caught in a paradox, pressured to meet conflicting demands for cheap food and climate-friendly processes, The EU's farm-to-fork strategy, part of the broader European Green Deal, imposes ambitious targets on farmers, including halving pesticides by 2030, reducing fertilizer use, and devoting more land to non-agricultural use. The Common Agricultural Policy, CAP, a $55 billion a year subsidy system underpinning Europe's food security for over 6 decades, is facing scrutiny. Historically based on the principle of economy of scale, the CAP has led to consolidation, with the number of farms in the EU declining by over a third since 2005. This consolidation has left larger farms grappling with high levels of debt in a low-margin business, while smaller farms find themselves increasingly uncompetitive. The EU's evolving green policies, intertwined with the CAP, have further alarmed the farming sector. Farmers, responsible for 11% of the EU's greenhouse gas emissions, are apprehensive about meeting targets that seem unrealistic, economically unviable, and ultimately self-defeating. National governments are beginning to address farmer concerns in response to the protests. Germany has softened plans to cut diesel subsidies, and France has retracted a diesel tax increase while pledging financial aid. At the EU level, the European Commission has proposed measures such as limiting agricultural imports from Ukraine and providing exemptions for certain obligations in 2024.
Farmers that are outside, we see you and we hear you. And if you want your voice to be heard, make it heard also in June, when you vote for the European Parliament elections.
However, as farmers increasingly garner support from far-right political factions, politicians are forced to navigate a delicate balance between addressing farmer grievances and upholding broader policy objectives. With European Parliament elections on the horizon, concessions seem likely to placate an already restive farming community. The French segment of this pan-European farmer rebellion has taken a noteworthy turn as French farmers' unions, after days of impassioned protests, announced a temporary halt to their disruptive actions. Their demonstrations, marked by tractors blocking highways and symbolic gestures, such as dumping manure in front of government buildings, were a visible outcry against the challenges that have besieged their industry. The central message echoed through the protests. French farmers can no longer sustain their livelihoods amid the onslaught of cheap imports, a lack of subsidies, and escalating production costs. French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal, in response to the farmers' fervent appeals, has unveiled a series of concessions aimed at addressing their immediate concerns. The agreement encompasses commitments to refrain from importing agricultural products that utilize pesticides banned in the EU, along with the introduction of new financial subsidies and tax breaks. Notably, these measures have, at least temporarily, assuaged the grievances of France's 2 largest agricultural unions, the Young Farmers and the FNCA, the French acronym for the National Federation of Farmers' Unions. The farmer protests across the European Union serve as a poignant reminder of the challenges faced by those who cultivate the continent's food. Policymakers must engage in a meaningful dialogue with farmers, addressing their concerns while charting a course that safeguards both the environment and the economic viability of agriculture. As Europe stands at this critical juncture, the resolution of these issues will not only shape the future of farming, but also influence the broader socio-economic landscape for years to come. If you found this information valuable, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more updates. Remember, stay informed, stay engaged. Your awareness and involvement contribute to shaping a sustainable future for agriculture and beyond.